What are we meant to make of this increase in petrol prices?
Yeah, evening, Mark. So obviously, I know you've got a worldwide audience, but we're talking about the kind of the UK situation, and what we've seen. And you're right on the money there to say that we're seeing these records every single week. So I would imagine we're going to see record prices again next week. So the Department for Transport, which is the government body that monitors fuel prices in the UK, they've been looking at petrol prices as of kind of the RAC and the AA in the UK, and we look at the weekly change in prices. We've had data back to the 1990s now, Mark, and over the last week, we've seen the biggest weekly rise now of over 7 pence since records began. And that kind of puts into context that really small cut that the Chancellor gave back at the end of March of 5 pence per litre. At the current prices now, we've got an average of £1.87 for unleaded petrol, £1.92 for diesel. I think the important thing, Mark, is that it's up 58 pence on this time last year. So we go back 52 weeks ago, you're talking 58 pence. And remember now that historically, back in the day, the government didn't charge VAT on fuel, but they do now, and they take the VAT on top of that. So the 58 pence rise in the petrol over the last kind of year or so means the Chancellor's taken 11 pence more in VAT. So the Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak were kind of cheering the fact that they'd given 5 pence off a litre back in March, but they're making 11 pence a litre more. So actually the Treasury are coining it in more now, Mark, than what they were back before they thought they were giving a handout back to the public.
Yes, that's a brilliant point, actually. They're in fact, they give us 5 pence and then they take 11 pence off us. So in fact, when politicians go on about the windfall profits for big oil, it's also windfall profits for big politicians too. You have an interesting theory on what's driving this, something that's different from the 90s and the 70s and all the other times we've seen petrol rocket up. This time, in all kinds of places, the oil companies are basically on a death sentence from our political class, aren't they?
No, indeed, Mark. So if you think we've had these kind of oil price spikes in previous kind of generations and decades, but most governments across the world, in the more developed world, you take the UK, they want to ban all petrol and diesel cars by 2030. So if you're a company in a country sitting on all this rich fossil fuel, well, they're talking about the fact that you've basically been given notice by many governments across the world that we're going to stop buying your product. So it makes total sense for them during this kind of crash that we've seen with regards to the Ukraine war and the petrol prices going up, that you're going to try and get a little bit more and more money out of this, because it makes sense to be doing that, Mark, because if you've been told we're not going to be buying your product in 20 years and there's plenty of supply still underneath there, why not make as much money as you can out of the public? And obviously, the Treasury rely on a lot of this duty, Mark. They make about £28 billion a year out of fuel duty, which actually is more than the combined budget of the whole of the Department for Transport. But I think the Chancellor really needs to be looking at in the UK. Now, Boris was talking last week about we're still looking at it and we're going to consider what we're going to do. But Rishi Sunak, Mark, last week was, we've seen all these record prices, was out inspecting new electric buses. The average driver, if they're doing 7,500 miles a year, they're paying £500 a year more. The Chancellor, the Prime Minister, they really need to act now, because the UK cut 5 pence. Just over the border in Ireland, we've seen 17 pence cut. In Germany, we've seen 25 pence. In Spain, 17 pence. So Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak really need to get kind of their act together and start looking after families rather than looking after the Treasury's pockets.
Yeah, Rishi Sunak testing electric lorries and electric buses is basically the transportation equivalent of saying let them eat cake, isn't it? Let them drive electric. I mean, this is preposterous.
No, indeed, Mark. The thing is, where's all the electric going to come from as well? We've got the cost of living crisis across the world. It's hitting the UK as well, the energy price cap. But, by October this year, the average energy prices for a household would have doubled compared to a year earlier. And that's including gas. It's including electric. We're using gas to actually make electric. There's not enough, capacity to generate the electricity to power all the homes. So if we go to 2030, and we axe all of these cars, where is the electricity going to come from, Mark? It's just absolute nonsense.
No, on the first day that there were no petrol pumps and everyone's charging their cars around the country, the lights are just going to go out everywhere. The lights are going out all over Europe, as was said before the First World War and right now too. Thank you very much, Jamie. It is always great to see you.